So thanks a lot. You hear me well, I hope, yes? So thanks a lot to the organizers for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to present to you some European perspectives of personalized medicine. What I will try to do here is to present some opportunities to you, particularly in relation to the upcoming European partnership on personalized medicine. And in that context, I would also like to highlight some of the issues and problems that we need to resolve in order really to get there, to get to the full vision of personalized medicine. So first, a couple of words on who we are. So the International Consortium of Personalized Medicine has existed since 2016. We are rather special because our members are all either funding agencies or non-for-profit funding agencies or ministries. So in principle, I mean, we are all our members are decision makers within the area of health. And so that kind of makes us, I think there's something wrong with my slides here. No, it's okay. So, sorry. So we have a direct link to decision makers. And there's a continued interest from the world to participate in our organization. The largest addition is from South Africa, so we need to update our map here. It's no longer covering. But rather recently, we have the South African Medical Research Council, which is one of the largest funding agencies in South Africa, participating in our organization. And I think it kind of reflects the realization that there is a need to be part of this organization who is trying to really promote and develop personalized medicine throughout the full value chain. Just a word on what is personalized medicine, and coming back to Anna's point on what are the names. And a dear child is having many names, so there's a whole range of names. And some years back, there was sometimes a very heated debate. Is it personalized medicine? Is it precision medicine? And what is it actually? But in principle, I mean, the definition we have used is the one you can see up there, which was kind of defined by the European Council and the European Commission back in 2015. And in my opinion, I think that the important thing is to focus on to provide the right therapy for the right patient at the right time. And that might be a very expensive treatment, an ATMP, or a very personalized treatment based on the person's own samples, which is then converted into a treatment. But it could also be the right use of very standard of care treatments, which is being used for a lot of patients. So I think that's not really important. The important thing is to see it from the patient perspective. So is the individual patient getting the right treatment? I think that's the important thing. And whether we call it personalized medicine, precision medicine, integrative medicine, whatever, is to me not really important. And as Anna also alluded to, I also think that 10 years down the road, some might remember that we talked about personalized medicine, but it will basically be forgotten because we are going to talk about health. Health for patients and health for citizens. And I think that's kind of the important thing here. So what do we do within ICPermed? We have made a couple of key publications, which has become very useful over the years. Some very important activities we do is various events. So this year we had our first face-to-face workshop after the COVID in Brussels in June. And in October we had our last, I must regretfully say, conference on personalized medicine. And it was actually very successful and very interesting. We also do have a number of other activities. And very importantly, we also have internal networking. And I see that as one of our most important activities because since we have the direct contact to decision makers within health, in a wider range of countries. I think we there have a very good way to help promote personalized medicine and also to align activities within personalized medicine, so that it's not being diverse, but we are trying to aligning the activities. And one thing that I think is sometimes we forget a little bit, because we discuss a lot about why should we do personalized medicine? Is it worth it? And I think for those of us who are kind of into it and believe in it, it's kind of a bloody obvious question. Of course it's worthwhile. But as the field progresses and is producing increased pressure on healthcare systems, this discussion is coming up again. So it's not only no longer enough to come up with kind of we can provide better treatments and so on and so on. I mean, we need to have solid arguments. Why is it worthwhile to invest in personalized medicine? And we will come back to a lot of discussions later on, for example, health economics, which is a key part of this. But it's really necessary to have some really heavy arguments. And the best arguments we can get are the ones you are producing. That's kind of the best practice examples, showing the benefits. We saw some excellent examples from Anna in her presentation. For example, the one on pharmacodynamics and co-medications and so on, which is kind of really becoming a problem and is costing a lot, and can we decrease these costs? So there's a lot of things here that needs to really be told, and the good stories needs to be told. So please remember that. And we try to do that within ICPermed, to collect these examples and publish them on our websites and so on. So if you have some good examples, come with them, and we will be glad to help promote them and tell them to the world. We are not alone in this on the European scale. So we have all these blue ones. They are all CSAs, so they are coordinating and support activities. And they all have, as we have, kind of the purpose to promote personalized medicine. And they have different scopes. So we have, for example, Sino-EU and ICPermed, which are reaching out to include China in our networks. We have regions for Permed and Sapphire, which is trying to include European regions. One of the later ones is Africa, which is trying to make contacts to Africa. And then we also have some more specific ones, which is dealing with specific topics. So we have the ICPermed, which is dealing with health economy. We have Permed, who is going to, was dealing with new clinical strategies needed to promote personalized medicine. And the latest one is Profit, which is a very ambitious name, in my opinion. But that's about personalized prevention. And then we have all the green ones, which are pretty important because they are all funding agencies. And funding is, of course, a key requisite in order to promote this area. And if you look at the funding landscape over the last 10 years or so, it has actually been pretty good. So a very good friend has been the European Commission. So over the last 10 years, the Commission has actually invested more than 2 billion euros in the field and has been really instrumental in driving the PM agenda. So that's very nice. And one of the important ones is ICPermed, which we call our funding arm, whereas we see ICPermed as our policy arm. But we have just concluded the 5th call within ICPermed. And it has actually been one of the most successful ERANETs in the history of ERANETs. And I think that kind of reflects the need and the interest in this area. So in total, we have something like, I think, more than 100 projects running right now within personalized medicine. In the total budget, it's in the order of 120 million euros. So it's really a very successful thing. The bad thing about it is, if you look at the funding success rate, it's less than 10%. And that reflects that we are getting much more applications than we can fund. And that's, of course, a pity, but again, reflects kind of the need to really go into this area. What is also interesting is that it's only in the first call that the European Commission was a funding partner. The remaining 4 ones were all funded by member states. So that means that there's a lot of interest also from national, regional, and cross-national level in order to invest in this area. So the next thing is then Horizon Europe. As you probably all know, the new 7-year program, which is, as always, is very ambitious, covering a lot of areas of importance for our society. The money has become larger. So if you look at FP7 was 50 billion, Horizon 2020 was 80 billion, and now we're up to almost 100 billion euros. So there's a lot of money to get here in order to promote different areas. But of course, if you look into it, it's also extremely complex. And I think that, unfortunately, I know from talking to a lot of people about this that it's seen as very complicated, very difficult to find where is the money for my project? How do I do this? And if you then identify the opportunity that you can use, then you have all the bureaucracy. And unfortunately, a lot of researchers, particularly also within biotech, for example, they simply refrain from going into this area. And that's actually a pity, because they simply don't have the resources to deal with all this administration. But I can only say, take a look at it, because there is, as I said, a lot of money, a lot of funding to get here. So there's a lot of opportunities. If you look into Pillar 2, we can find all these different things, and this is kind of where we find health. And again, complexity. So these are all the new partnerships, and there are now 49 candidate European partnerships. And the one of interest for us here is the one in Cluster 1 on health. And this is also where we find the new partnership on personalized medicine. But before I'm going into that detail somewhat more, I just want to attract your attention to some of the other ones. The Innovative Health Initiative is kind of the successor of IMI, the Innovative Medicines Initiative. And this is about public-private partnerships. And I also believe, as Anna do, that it's one of the most important things we need to invest in, because if we don't join forces with industry and between industry and academics, I mean, we will not really get anywhere. So try to take a look at this. They already started now to publish calls, so there is opportunities to go there. And then there's a number of other ones. I cannot go into details here, but take a look at these also, because some of these will also soon become starting to publish calls where you can find funding opportunities. But let me focus on the one on personalized medicine. And none of these new partnerships, or very few of them, are starting from scratch. So the one on the ICPermed, as we call it, is based on experience from ICPermed, our policy arm, and ERA-Permed, our funding arm. And it's the intention that that should be united within the ICPermed. Another thing we also consider very important is that these projects I talked about before, they have all generated a lot of knowledge, a lot of networks, and a lot of value. And it's the intention that ICPermed is picking up on all this value and including them and using them going forward. Because I think the worst thing that happens nowadays is that you do have excellent research projects, create excellent results, maybe also creating excellent publications, but then it stops. And I would say, in order to really make an impact, you need to make sure that your publications is being used further on, because as publication as such, it's really not an impact. It's a good result, but it's not an impact. So that's really needed. And we will try to somehow make sure that the value will be used. We will, of course, cooperate with the other partnerships because we want to do synergies and not double work. And then, of course, we also need to have all the support from the EU, from the member states. So just to quickly show you what the next steps are. So our proposal writing group was kicked off last week. And we have, I think, about 25 member states involved. And it's very nice to see that the HRB is one of the ones who continue to support personalized medicine, which is indeed very good. And budget-wise, we are now, above 300 million euros. So there will be quite a lot of funding coming on here. 100 of them is coming from the EC, and the rest is coming from the member states. We will file our proposal in April next year, and the start of the partnership is expected to be probably early 24. But one of the prerequisites in order to do these kind of, or set up this partnership, is that we need to make what is called the Strategic Research and Innovation Agenda. It's a document which can be considered as a blueprint or a roadmap for what the partnership needs to focus on. Because one thing is to set up the whole thing, but you also need to have some content. And what should be the content? And to prepare this document is actually rather complex, because personalized medicine is increasing in complexity as time goes by. And to get into that, I just want to show you kind of a very simple picture of the development of personalized medicine. So it started actually about 10 years ago or so, where it was mainly about genomic research and understanding how genomic is linked to disease states. And that was kind of a very closed, focused area, which was easy to handle at pure research. But then it started to be successful and started to provide recommendations for treatments. Then in the next step, it was realized that it's not only a matter of genomic data, it's also a matter of healthcare data in order to really get to the treatment of a good treatment of the patients. And then in the next step, when that also started to become successful, there was a question about how to implement these mechanisms into our healthcare systems. And then the newest kid on the block is personalized prevention, which is something which is being developed. I guess we all know what prevention is, or have a good idea what that is, but personalized prevention is a more difficult animal to define. Anyway, it's still a very important area. So as we kind of go through all this, it becomes more and more complicated. And I'll just show you, I mean, one of the nice examples of implementation is the French Genomic Medicine Initiative, which is within cancer trying to set up a system so that all cancer patients in France are getting the same treatments, the same, starting from the visit to the doctor all the way to profiling, genomic profiling, and so on, and all the way down to getting the right treatment. And it's well on the way, so I think they are on track in order to do this, but this is kind of what we should strive for, maybe in all other kind of diseases. However, why is it then so difficult to set up? And the main reason is that our current healthcare systems and the way we do things doesn't really apply for full implementation for personalized medicine. So, because it's no longer, you can no longer look at it the old-fashioned way, so it's a linear thing. So you do some research, you find a drug candidate, you do a clinical research, you register it, and then you market it, and then that's it. That doesn't apply anymore. Because if, for example, you do some very nice basic research, and you find a new treatment for a certain disease, which is very focused on a smaller population of patients. You need to do the clinical research and the clinical development, but the old-fashioned phase 1, 2, 3 trial system does not apply because there's simply not patients enough. So you need to find other ways of doing it. Maybe you need to do preconditioned approvals and get sending out on the market, and then follow the patients over a longer time frame. But if you do that, then you need to get hold of the regulatory authorities because they need to change their systems. And if you want to have the data back from the patients receiving the treatment after this conditioned approval, well, you need to tell the patient that it's necessary that they are doing this. And you need to have a system for data access and use of data so that it kind of works. So if you want to do all these things, you all of a sudden have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different places where you need to do major changes. And this is kind of reflecting kind of the complexity we have within personalized medicine. So each of these different areas, they need to be addressed. And then we will not have a linear system. Then we will have some kind of an ecosystem, as Anna very nicely framed it, so that we are having a system which is kind of then feeding itself and can really get us to the point where personalized medicine is providing its full value to the patients and to the citizens. And there are other things that I also would like to mention on this slide, which I think is problematic or needs to be addressed. Research, basic research. There are now, and later on we will hear, I'm sure, a lot of good examples on how progress is being done within research in order to provide new treatments. However, if you look critically at it, you will see that it's mainly cancer and rare diseases. It is starting to develop into the other areas, but it's still only very, very early days. And even within cancer, some overall numbers I saw recently said that only 20% of all cancer cases can actually be linked to a specific genomic defect. And of these 20% of the patients, it's only about 20% of them that can be offered a treatment based on this genetic defect. So we are down to below 10% of all cancer cases who is actually receiving personalized PM-based treatment. That is not really very much. So that just shows that we are on the way, but we still need to do a lot of things in that area. Another point which is also very important is kind of the whole health economic research and the whole health economic aspects. Because as this treatment is developing, it's also putting more and more pressure on the healthcare systems. And now there's also starting to become pushback from the healthcare systems because they cannot really accommodate these things. And you all know the questions coming up. Can we afford this? Shouldn't we spend our money on a broader scale so that we can reach more patients and so on and so on? So we need to have different ways of doing these things. And what is really needed here is kind of new models, how to run the health economy. And that's kind of difficult. And I'm sure that we will hear later on today about the possibilities and the problems. I can tell that I mentioned before that we have this project called ICPermed, where there was a group of healthcare professionals, or health economics experts who tried to do studies on comparison of PM-based treatment with conventional treatment. And I'll just briefly mention 2 examples. The one example was on a very rare cancer where they actually had data to do this comparison. And in one case, they actually turned out to come up with a positive cost-benefit case. That was nice. But that was when they did not include the cost of the testing needed. if they included the cost of the testing, the case became negative. And that is, of course, that if you only look at the very small patient group who received the treatment, then it would be a much better case because the new treatment was much better than the old one. But in order to identify these specific patients, you need to test so many people, and that is costing money. So that just reflects to another thing, and that is kind of the whole thing about diagnostics and testing for having all the data needed. The other thing that is also, another example they also looked at was within metabolic diseases. And there they actually compared the case where they had some conventional treatment for this metabolic disease. And then they had a case where there was done a much more close genetic and profiling of the patients. And it actually turned out that to do this profiling turned the case into a very cost-benefit positive case, because you could avoid treating a lot of patients who should not receive the treatment and had no benefit from it. So there are quite a lot of things here that needs to be addressed. And we need to address all of them. I can talk for hours about these different things, but I will stop here. But the point is, prioritization and timing is absolute key, because we need to address all of them, and some of them are more urgent than others. And what I consider one of the most urgent ones is about data and data access. It's something we have been struggling with for years now, and there are good developments to some extent, but we need to have data for all aspects of doing personalized medicine. And what we badly miss in most countries are legislative frameworks to ensure the privacy and security of data access. We have seen some nice examples also from Anna's presentation, but it's still very isolated. It's not really on a global scale. So we need to have this to work so that we can share data and use data, not only within regions and countries, but also cross borders. And there we are far from yet. And the other thing, which is also becoming increasingly important, is real-world data. So it's no longer maybe so interesting to have data from very well-defined clinical trials, because the important data will come from the patients out there, one way or the other. So we need to have patient involvement and engagement needed. And when we then get all this data, it's enormous amount of data. And a lot of people are now saying also that we have a severe problem. We cannot handle all this data. We need a lot more biostatisticians. We need a lot more artificial intelligence and machine learning in order to really benefit from all these data. There's a number of countries who is now well on the way to solve these problems. And what I have my high hopes on is the upcoming European health data space, which will kind of provide, the Commission will provide a framework which the individual countries can use to set up these legal frameworks that is needed. It's not solved by that. I guess you all remember when the GDPR legislation came. It caused a lot of havoc and problems in the different countries. But eventually we got there, so I hope the same will happen here. And I will also mention the 1 Million Genomes Initiative, which is really an organization that has done a tremendous work in this area. But we still have ways to go before we get there. So a lot of problems and things to solve. And this document that we are preparing is now in public consultation. So you all have an opportunity to provide your input. And we have thought a lot about how can we structure it so that it becomes edible and manageable for you, for example. Because we could sit down and write a 60-page document, which is very complex, and we didn't think that was a very good idea. So we came up with the idea that we, for each of these different challenges, have made a challenge and objectives and an outcome scheme. And so we call them triplets. So defining the challenge, what are the objectives that need to be solved, and what are the expected outcomes. And in the document, we right now have 48 of these triplets. And you have an opportunity here to go in and propose your triplets, or make adjustments or comments to the one that is already there. And it's highly appreciated. The ones we have right now is based on interviews with more than 50 experts in all of the areas, because we consider expert input as absolutely key in order to make a quality document. And this document, it's our hope that it will not only be the basis for the European partnership of personalized medicine, but also be a general guidance document which can be used by everyone who is interested in personalized medicine. So the partnership itself, it will consist of a funding part, and there will be funding for basic research, translational research, which hopefully can end up in new treatments and things for patients. It will also include demonstration projects and pilots relating to the implementation of solutions into healthcare systems. And then very importantly, there's also the whole policy thing, because we must realize that we cannot solve it all by research and innovation. We also now need to have the politicians and our decision makers to do the right things. Okay. The whole thing, how it's going to work, I will not go into detail here, but it's currently being discussed. But it will probably be kind of research and funding over innovation system and health system implementation in a number of cross-cutting topics. And what I just will mention here, that we hope that the ICPermed will continue to exist within this framework. So I don't know how I'm on time, but I'm getting to the end now. You can join ICPermed in different ways. But I think the most interesting one for you here is the last one. So we will, when it comes up and running, we will kind of start to, the calls will be published, and you can then start to make applications and form consortia. There are other ways also, if you're interested, consultation, advisory activities, stakeholder activities. And the members will mainly be funding agencies and ministries, as we have it currently in ICPermed. We hope the first calls will come in 2024. So, and I think that brings me to my last slide, because some of the conclusions, we do have a promising funding landscape for personalized medicine. There's an interest regionally and nationally, and at EU level, there's also a willingness to put money into this. So that is indeed very good, and all the funding is definitely needed. Research and innovation must continue to lead the way. The extension here is that it's not only longer a matter of genomic research and biomedical research. We need to have research into regulatory sciences, into health economics. And I will here mention, maybe Catherine will mention it herself, but at the conference in Paris, where Catherine Payne made a very nice presentation on health economics, she actually defined a new omics to the omics family. So we are not only having pharmacogenomics or proteomics and so on, we also are having health economics, because they are really becoming a very important part. And another thing is also that it's no longer to do this bottom-up, because when we do research and innovation, we have been pushing the agenda from that area. It's the results from research and innovation that has been promoting and pushing the PM agenda forward. But now we come to a point where we also need some top-down activity, because if our government is not providing the right legal frameworks and so on, as I mentioned before, then we are stuck, and we will not really reach the full potential of personalized medicine. So we need to push our decision makers to do the right thing. And as I said before, the best way to convince them is to show them that PM is the best way to go and come up with the best practice examples, because that is the most convincing argument we can come to. So, with these, I will say thanks for your attention, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ejner. Great deal of opportunities that I hope will be grasped by people here today. Do we have a quick question? Yes, Katrina.
Thanks for your talk, Ejner. Katrina Creeley, Data Infrastructures and Personalised Medicine at the HRB. We were going to talk a little bit about different partnerships later on. I understand that there's a new Life Science Council in Denmark to support public-private partnerships or to promote that. Could you say a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, we are trying to. Yeah, I have my prototype. What we are trying to promote in all countries is what we are calling hubs. So to have kind of hubs of stakeholders in all countries and regions who can kind of sit together and define what do we need in our area in order to promote this. And this is one of the examples of having such a group of experts sitting together who can discuss kind of what are the needs and how should we do it so that it kind of fits, for example, for the Danish conditions. And I can only recommend all countries and regions to do the same thing. And particularly if you have larger countries, Germany, for example, who is having individual states, I mean, so that they are not acting. So they should act individually from state to state, but it's also important that a country like Germany is having one voice in some cases. So and there these hubs will kind of idea will be a way to go.